the biggest hullabaloo that has resulted from this episode.
Oh, I didn't even want to talk about it.
I think there's an interesting place we can get to.
Okay.
So the internet has been very mad that all the beach scenes were in very low light.
Yeah.
Despite all being filmed in broad daylight and then being edited. It's like day to night photography. Yeah, so that's how they were edited, and the lighting and the color was changed. And people have been
I don't know what that was.
Twilight.
I hated it.
Twilight. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure. Audience, did you recognize those beautifully sung notes?
There's the poll.
That was Twilight.
Yeah,
I was
so
really hoping
people have been tweeting all day and on other networks and things saying like I couldn't see anything, and HBO is actually replying to some of them. Like the HBO Max account is saying the dimmed lighting
Mr.
of
HBO. I'm sorry. He's so mad at me.
Howard Box Office.
the dimmed lighting of this scene was an intentional creative decision.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I assumed. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
So my question: what happened to you after an hour?
I don't know.
So my question for you,
honestly, why was that like a second-hand heckling? She heckled you over the thing you were reading.
I'm sorry.
So my question for you two educated and smart, considerate adults is: what do you think the goal or purpose was of that intentional creative decision?
Number one, it's to make the dragon look cooler because
if you can't see him,
yes. Because
okay.
I have noticed in this show, as beautifully done as this show is, as high as the production value is, some of the dragon scenes, especially the ones where they're flying, don't look very good. And this one looked great because it was so dark. So I think that's one thing. Also, it's what's the kid's name? It's Aemond. He's, sneaking out when it's still dark out, and Rhaenyra is sneaking around when she's sleeping with Daemon. Like, it's a lot of these people doing behind the scenes sneaky things in the dark, trying to get things done quietly and under the radar. So I think that's part of it.
It's a stealth episode.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was still too dark. I mean, we had all of our lights off, and we had
we have to watch these in pitch black now.
And I still couldn't see it. And we have
I could.
We don't have a crappy TV, but it's a nice TV. And I couldn't see anything.
I could. And I was right next to you with my glasses on.
Well, congratulations. I guess
think
you
we
have
could
better
see
vision
everything.
than me.
I mean, it was a little oppressive. Tristan, I'll let you answer before I babble.
Well, if we're going along with the theme of the episode, if fire is a prison and fire emits light, then the only time that these characters are actually free to do the things that they want to do and follow their wills and the whim of what they feel driven to do is under cover of night. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think if we're really going to buy HBO's explanation that it was an intentional choice and not just some oversight, then I think that we have to do it, in line with the themes of the episode. Mm-hmm. The only reason that Aemond gets to go to get this dragon, the sole object of his heart's desire, is because it's so dark and nobody sees him. Mm-hmm. The only reason that Rhaenyra and Daemon get to sort of consummate their pre-wedding is because it's so dark and no one can see them. I was worried that we were going to get a Bran style scene.
Yes.
I totally was expecting that too.
Yeah. Where he was going to see that. So I think they knew that we would go there with it, especially because they transitioned to that scene one right after another. Mm-hmm. But the thread that ties that scene, other than it being nighttime and on a beach, is not that it was in the same area. It's that they were doing the same thing. Both of these characters, or all three of these characters really, were going and achieving the one thing that they really, really, really wanted. And the only way that they could do that was outside of the light, in the darkness.
Versus Alicent, who tried to do what she really wants, which is to kill Rhaenyra, but she tried to do it in front of everybody, right in front of the fire, where
and that's a
everyone could see
well-lit
her,
scene.
and it was not successful.
And whenever Aemond gets back into that cave, again, you've got a torch there, it's well lit. He has to come back into the real world out of this fantasy, and he is sort of tethered by the bounds of, that is my mom's dragon. You don't get to have that. He has to face the repercussions in the real world for his actions that he took whenever he could really pursue his true desires in the dark.
And that becomes our fire and blood scene.
Yes.
Bloodshed by the light of the fire.
Totally.
I mean, I think it is. I believe HBO that it is an intentional creative decision because the same director who did this one, Miguel Sapochnik, is the guy who did The Long Night, which was the previous episode people got mad at for being dark. So, yes, I mean, he definitely saw that blowback and made the decision again. So I respect that.
Yeah.
Even if it's annoying for some people, I totally believe it's an artistic choice. I think, to follow your thread, Tristan, I think it does speak to the themes of the episode. Mostly the oppressive grief. The first 20 minutes of this episode is a very slow-moving funeral, and it's a grief that we see some characters have, like some Lena's daughters, for example. That's a real grief, and then we see the false grief in like Rhaenyra and Aegon, who are drinking or like rolling their eyes and don't care.
Yeah.
But while those people politic and scheme, the people who knew Lena and cared about her are fully incapacitated. Laenor is just out of the picture for half the episode.
Yeah, nearly drowning himself in the ocean, which I thought he was going to do.
That grief is oppressive. It's blanketing, distracting. It obscures everything for them. And in that way, it expands on the theme that I brought up last week of isolation. Like, we really haven't seen that many funerals in Westeros in any of these shows. And this scene being so protracted, so honorific and dark, and maybe it's because I've been rereading the first Game of Thrones book, it reminded me of Ned and Robert in the crypt.
Oh, sure.
Which is also an incredibly dark scene.
Yeah.
It's poorly lit. They're kind of admiring this gray, dusty kind of rock face that I'm sure looks nothing like Lyanna, who they're talking about. So it's all obscured anyway. It builds into that seen and unseen thing we've talked about.
Yeah.
And to build that back to the content of the episode, a character is blinded. So seen and unseen is everywhere in this episode.